各位嘉宾，大家早。今天很高兴的哈，我们开头的主题演讲者，我们邀请到了殷一宏康颖康教授。那康教授哈，目前是香港中文大学的商学院教授，他在哥伦比亚大学哈拿到了社会人格心理学博士学位。同时哈，他过去20年哈，他曾经先后在香港科技大学、UIUC 英洛哈、Urbana-Champaign 分校哈担任教授，还有在新加坡南洋理工大学任教，现在又回到香港的中文大学商学院任教。那康颖康教授的研究兴趣包括文化和认知、身份和群体间的关系。他全力奉行跨领域的研究，并寻求整合社会心理学、行为经济学、神经科学还有遗传学来研究身份跟群体间的一些动态关系。这种整合当然可以对既有的知识带来的新的了解，以及文化、身份跟人类生物学如何共同进化演化，从而全面对全球化和多元化的一些挑战时能够了解人类的发展情形。那康教授过去曾编辑了10多本书包括牛津多元文化认同手册。这本书获得了2015年Professor Klineberg 全球心理学丛书奖。另外，他过去发表了有超过150篇的期刊论文，很多都是在American Psychologist Psychological Review 这种一级期刊里面发表文章。他的研究成果在心理学、教育学、管理学、市场营销学，还有全球研究中广泛被引用。他的原创性作品也获得了多个奖项，包括2001年的Otto Klineberg 的那个文化与国际关系奖，2004年的国际自我跟身份认同协会的早期学术奖，另外2013年有南洋研究的卓越奖。那康颖教授也被评选为心理科学会，就是 APS 跟实验心理学、实验社会心理学会的Fellow， 就是会士。那过去8年，他跟中国社会科学院合作，为中国大陆、香港、台湾、欧洲跟澳大利亚的中国社会科学家自愿提供的一些研究、开发与培训的一些相关工作。我想从过去他的一些学术研究表现我们可以了解到他积极热心于学术研究工作，而且他的研究的主题是跨领域的。今天他要跟我们讲的是有关于身份认同、主观的身份认同的这样的社经地位的跨领域研究整合议题。我们现在是不是热烈掌声欢迎康教授来给我们做这个精彩的主题演讲。
谢谢叶教授我们可以
Maybe I'll change gear. I will start to use English. Is that all right? Okay. Thank you so much, Kohui. So I'm very, very honored to be here today. And this is my first time to give a talk at the Taiwan Psychological Association. It's my great honor. One thing I want to tell you about is that actually I'm an old friend of Taiwanese psychologists. And so these are some of the old photos that I dig up. So you recognize one of this was me. Actually, this was taken in 1997. Yesterday we mentioned about it. Gonghui is there. And the location, actually this was my office and these were my paintings. So I also paint. And so that was the year when you visit Larry very far here at Hong Kong UST. And then, Liang Jue, my mentor, he passed away, a few years ago, and so I think this photo I treasure a lot, and this is a very important photo that reminds me of him and everybody when we were young, more than 20 years ago. And then another more recent photo, fast back, is 2011. And then, Yang Guoshu Lao Shi, we miss him a lot too. So all these photos really bring back a lot of memory. And Gong Hui was there as well, And then I was there, my husband. And then, so you saw many people. So this evidence that I'm an old friend current psychologist. And so today I'm going to share with you some of the research that I did recently. And so I want to use it as an illustration of how you can combine different disciplines together. And from the title, you know that I'm an advocate of interdisciplinary research. And why does it make sense? I think it makes sense for many, many different reasons. And then I just name two. First, it's a very powerful tools. Actually, there are many powerful tools from different disciplines. Neuroscience, I think some of you are neuroscientists, so you're familiar with this. And bioinformatics, so this is related to genetics. And the large data set we have about people's genetic code now allow us to discern a lot of mental illness and other illness. So these are really very powerful tools. Another one is GI science, Geographic Information Science, which is developed by geographers and computer scientists. And actually today in some of my research, I also use this technology to use satellite data to combine with psychology. And so these are just tools. I often tell my grad students, tools are very good to learn. I encourage all my students to learn the latest technology. But however, you shouldn't put tools in front of the horse, meaning you shouldn't put the cart in front of the horse. Horse meaning the theory. The theory, always you have to think about the theory. Tools is just for you to test your theory. So for me, actually the most exciting thing is this one. It's the theory, the multi-level of analysis. This tool allows you to understand the complex phenomena. And so one way to illustrate the complex phenomena, the multi-level phenomena that I'm talking about is this one. I believe that we as individuals here, we have our individual psychology, behavior, and we have a biological makeup, like our brain and our genes. But all these are embedded in groups, culture, and our bigger environmental and ecological context. And all these will exert pressure on us. And as a result, we will adapt as well. So it's a dynamic system, it's an open system, because we are constantly under environmental, culture, and group influences. And in order to adapt to this, we also change, and that's the, what we call culture gene co-evolution. Okay, so that's a very simple way to put it. Okay, so my research deal with this. Now, today I'm giving a concrete example. The example is related to the field of psychology. The field of psychology have a biological revolution in the past 2 decades. And so I think in Taiwan as well, now there are more neuroscientists. And however, one thing I think it misses is that the combination of the two. That is the interplay between socio-cultural concepts and biology. And I think it's relatively underexplored. And so to fill this gap, and I'll try to shed light on the causal link between socio-cultural construct and biology. The socio-cultural construct that I select is the subjective socio-economic status. And what is that? Now, SES, socio-economic status. I think many of you have heard about it, and actually this is one of the most research variable in sociology. So this is defined as characterization of people based on their economic position in society using economic-related indicators, for example, income, occupation, and education. And so in sociology, there are different ways and different theories of how to combine these three variables. And so there are tons of research that look at this. And it's important because oftentimes in many societies, the lower SES, if you have low SES, is associated with poor outcomes. For example, higher stress, poorer health, higher obesity rate. And the reason is that because if you don't have money, you don't have education, then you cannot afford healthy food, and you cannot avoid poor environmental and risky jobs. So all these, I want to set up, like in sociology, this is a already very well-researched topic. However, in the past 5 years, there is a big change. What is the change? So these are publications, a large meta-analysis that's published in the past few years. This is 2013, this is 2018, 2017. They're all published in health psychology. What it talked about is that subjective, so that is not the objective one, but the subjective one, the psychological one. The subjective socio-economic status, subjective SES, predict beyond objective SES. So in all these analyses, they partial out the objective one. Just look at the subjective, the active values, the active predictive power of subjective one. They find a very substantial effect on health-related issues, health behavior or health outcome. Okay, so this is a very interesting findings, and also it shows that actually psychologists can contribute. I mean, we can take a more like objective sociological variable and then look at the subjective perception of it. And, okay, so subjective SES, how do you define this? This is people's subjective evaluation of their own standing in comparison to others. Okay, so this, you can ask a person to just think about, in a society, people are occupying different social hierarchies because of income, occupation, or education. But how do they feel about themselves relative to others? Okay, and the interesting thing is that the objective one and the subjective one, typically the correlation is only around 0.3. They are related, but they are not identical. There are still a lot of differences. So this would be a very interesting variable to look at. So my example or my research actually focused on this, subjective SES, all right? Now, subjective status and relative rank are stronger predictor of health and well-being than actual income and resources. That's what I told you just now. If you're interested, you can look up those meta-analysis, and there are clear evidence on that. Now, low subjective SES. Why would that matter? It's because we think it's because of feeling of relative deprivation. So it's not about whether you earn a lot in the absolute sense, but it's more about whether you earn more than your friends, your neighbor, or your peers, okay, your colleagues. So that actually matters more. People rely on the incidental feeling as source of information when making judgments. So we think that this relative declaration is core to many psychological outcomes. Now, just now I said that low SES is associated with cannot afford healthy food, cannot avoid poor environmental and risky jobs. So this is talking about the objective one. Now, in the following, I'm going to tell you two groups of research that is related to this. What I'm arguing is that low subjective SES actually is related to decision on food intake. That is not only whether you can afford, you can buy healthy food. Actually, it affects whether you will select and eat healthy food. Yeah, so this is beyond whether you can afford or not afford. So this we thought is very interesting. And then the second one, we talk about objective one. When you're poor, objectively poor, might be you don't have much choice. You cannot, you cannot avoid poor environment. But actually, what we want to claim is that you can also, your decision would be very much affected by it. A low subjective SES would affect your decision on environmental protection. Okay, so this is a subjective choice. It's not about objectively whether you can choose or not choosing. Okay, so that's our main argument. Now, let's go to the first part, subjective SES and food intake. So my former postdoc and I published this already in PNAS 2 years ago. So what we did in this experiment was the hypothesis is very straightforward. Feeling of relative declaration elicited by low subjective status amplify the valuation and intake of calories. So what we argue is that beyond objective SES, subjective SES would make people, especially low SES people, wanting high calorie food. They will eat more and eat in a larger volume. So that means they take excessive calories in their body, okay? And the way we did it was, there were actually different ways to measure. This is a widely used measure. For example, as I told you, participants, they will be given this very simple question. In our society, there are groups which tend to be towards the top and groups tend to be towards the bottom. At the top of the ladder are the people who are the best off, those who have the most money, most education, and most respected jobs. At the bottom are the people who are worse off, those who have the least money, least education, and least respected job. So what rank would you put yourself on this ladder currently compared to other people in your society? So this was my other scale of subjective socio-economic, subjective social status. So people just put their rank, okay? So this has been widely used. In some of the research, we use this, but in this particular PNAS paper, instead of using this, we use manipulation, okay? So we manipulate in all the studies. We randomly assign participants into one of the conditions, okay? So they read all this, and then we tell them that this is a ladder, and write a short essay on what it would be like to interact with someone from the top of the ladder. So half of the participants were asked to write when they interact with people on the top of the ladder. So what would this manipulation be? This manipulation would be what? The lowest subjective SES manipulation, because you are comparing with someone who are better than you, all right? So in reverse, we can ask them to write something about interacting with people at the bottom of the ladder, okay? So that would be the high subjective SES manipulation. Is that clear? Okay. So actually we borrowed this from well-established research. So we randomly assign participants into one of the conditions. Okay. So in the following, we ran 4 studies. The first study we ran on mechanical Turk, so the participants were Americans. But then in the latest study, we ran it on Singaporeans. So I did this study when I was in Singapore. Okay, so we ran it in Singaporeans. But all of them, we just randomly assigned participants to write about the top one on the bottom. Okay. Now, in the first study, very simple. This is an IAT test, implicit association task. So in this task, thank you. So in this task, what we did was, like I said, we recruit participants online in America, and then we designed this test. What we want to look at is the association of fatty food. So this is not so healthy food, French fry, or healthy food, apple, whether they associate with pleasant or unpleasant. Okay. So I'm not going into all the details of IATs, but many of you learned about it already. So we want to see whether there is an association of fatty food with more pleasant, okay, and then healthy food with unpleasant. That's our goal. And again, just to remind you, we think that by manipulating people, putting people into the low subjective SES, we will increase the association of fatty food with pleasant and healthy food with unpleasant. Is that clear? Okay. Yeah, so these are the words. So those are the typical. And indeed, so this were manipulation, randomly assigned, and then people in the low SES, actually they have the high calories present association. Okay, so it's amazing. We first studied this, and it's wow, amazing, and the effect size is pretty robust. And we thought that, wow, that's a very interesting implicit association, and we find it even by just a induction, a randomly assigned people. So we said, okay, oftentimes implicit attitudes might not predict explicit behavior. So if you know the literature, you know that. And you say, oh yeah, but when it worked, so Bobby and I, my former postdoc, was like, okay, let's run some behavioral studies. So in the one of the studies we did was we find some non-dieting Singaporean undergraduate students, okay? And then again, like half we put them in the low subjective SES condition, the other half in the high subjective SES condition. And by the way, we control the gender, baseline, hunger, and actual. So in all my study, I partial out the actual objective SES, okay? And then in this study, what we did was we told them that after we asked them to write the essay, we tell them that are we interested in how you evaluate a video clip? So they were asked to sit in a room alone, and then we show them a video, a short video. During the video, we said that, oh, we want to treat you with some snacks. So we give 3 bowl of things in front of them, okay? And chips, M&M chocolate, and raisin, okay? Which one is the healthiest? Of course, raisin, right? Yeah, and this is not so healthy, and this is not healthy either. So we asked them to freely consume. So they were, allowed to just eat it on their own while they watch the video. And the video lasts for 7 minutes, okay? So they watch it on their own. And after they finish, the participants left the room, and the experimenter come in, and then weight or listening, okay? So we actually set a standard weight before, and then after the participant left, we know how much they consume out of each of these type of food. So we can calculate the calories they have eaten. So again, our prediction is very straightforward. People who were just induced the low SES, they will eat more. And also they will eat more fatty food. They will like to eat the corn chips or M&M more, okay? And indeed, that was the case. And again, very robust findings. People in the low actually take in more calories, okay? And most of them actually is from the chips, okay, unhealthy food. And so we thought, okay, what's the catch here? And if you are an experimental psychologist or experimentalist, you know that the catch is on control condition, right? So there's no control. What should we do? Of course, we need to run another experiment to include the control. Yeah. So I don't show you the control yet, but again, we replicate this. But the way that we did it is a little bit different. So we invite participants again to the lab during lunchtime. We told them that don't eat lunch, we will serve you lunch. And then first we asked them to write the essay. Again, randomly assigned low and high subjective SES. And then we gave them this char soba. And the interesting thing is that actually there are 2 portions of char soba in it, okay? And I don't know whether you know of food experiments. Oftentimes they will say bottomless bowl. Yeah, that's the typical way they do food intake. We don't have bottomless. Bottomless meaning they pump soup up. So you can drink without finishing your soup. Yeah, we don't have that device, so, that fancy device. But instead we have 2 portions of char soba. Why do we need that? Because we want to have enough variance, in the behavior, okay? So indeed, someone really finished the 2 portion, and especially people who are assigned in the low SES condition, they ate a lot more than normal, the normal portion. People in the control group who didn't write any essay, so they were actually the same as the high SES. So now we know that indeed it's the low SES induction that drive the effect. Okay? So here in this paper, we were able to show that. And then, so basically we showed in the implicit association, low SES people after induction, they find high calorie food more pleasant, and also they indeed eat more, and also eat more calories. So my former postdoc, Chong, Bobby, he wasn't satisfied. So he said that, okay, I want to really look into even more micro level. And so this was a paper that he and his own postdoc carried on, and I was not involved in this, but I think it's one of the coolest paper I have ever seen. So he followed up on the same idea, but what he did was he looked at the gut-mind link. Gut is like your gut, here in your stomach, and then the mind. And actually this is the hottest topic in biology and psychology. And he particularly looked at the hunger enzyme. Hunger enzyme, we all have it. If you look at, this is a normal person. So here when you wake up, your hunger enzyme is increasing. And then this is the point when you feel that you really want to eat breakfast, okay? After you consume breakfast, your hunger enzyme subside because you fulfill, your hunger. And then the hormones, this hormone would also increase, gradually when you are ready for lunch. And after you took lunch, it became low, and then the dinner time. And these are during your sleep. You shouldn't feel hungry when you're asleep. If that hormone is too high, then it will make you, all wake up, and you need to go and have 宵夜. In Cantonese we call 宵夜, 夜宵. So, but you shouldn't actually. You should be low. You should be high, so that you feel satisfied. You feel fulfilled. So what he looked at, he wanted to look at into the low and high SES condition, and then people who are in a low condition should have a higher hormone. Yeah, so this is really a direct test of the biological response. And then he ran and conducted a study. He did a within subject design, but then randomly in 2 days. And what he did was, participants arrived and they should fast for 10 hours. And then he extract blood. He 抽血, extract blood, and then have the low SES condition versus control. Because we know that in our study, that is the low that drives. So he have this this is randomly assigned on different days for the same individuals. And then manipulation check, and he has a standard milkshake. Yeah. So this is from nutritional science, because now he's a PI in the Singapore Nutritional Science Center. So they have ways to create really standard nutritional drinks. So he have this nutritional standard drinks, and participants were just asked to look at it, and then extract blood again, and then consume it, and then wait, and then have the third time blood extraction. So really, you extract a lot of times the blood. One visit 3 times, so the person have to visit 2 times. All these were really healthy, normal adults, okay? And so they complete this. And actually, this is a quite standard procedures for testing diabetes, okay? And so he wanted to look at whether under the low SES conditions, indeed, people have a higher the hunger enzyme. And so this was the result. So this is the time to, after the participants just look at the milkshake before consuming. And the dark bar here is low status. And this is a change, because each person have different baseline level. So you see, indeed, there's a huge, significant difference between the low status versus the control condition. And then this is the time point 3 after consuming the milkshake for half an hour, and everybody drop, because they're healthy adults, they should drop, the hormones. So this was a really direct and cool study. And also, he asked people about their fullness, their subjective feeling. And interestingly, the low status, which is indicated by the red dot here, they, again, like our behavior study, they indeed feel less full and less satisfied, okay, subjectively. And that's why this would drive them with also the hormone and the subjective feeling. It drives them to eat more, and also the high, calorie food, which is more fair. Okay? So this is really I think a strong evidence. Now, why this is important? Because actually it's related to inequality. So these are the data from cross-cultural, somebody else collect this, but this resonates with our own research. Greater level of income is quite severe here, and I didn't expect that, but actually it's the case. So this actually is related to PM 2.5. And what I want to look at is the subjective SES and environmental protection. And the participants I recruited was all from mainland China. Now, so this was a dynamic graph of 215 mainland China and the dynamic change of PM 2.5. And the redder meaning the more polluted. Okay? So 215 May, June, July, so this is summertime, and then now comes the winter, yeah, and it's really severely polluted, and it's related to the way they heat up buildings, yeah, they use coal and other things. So in winter, usually, it's much more polluted, and you can see, especially in big cities, but also in the central country as well, it's very polluted. And this is a picture of Beijing. And on a clear day, you can see blue sky, but many days are like this. Yeah, it's the same location. Do you recognize it? Yeah. So it could be quite day and night. And of course, there were now a lot of studies that show that lead to a lot of health consequences, very severe health-related, like air, breathing, non-related disease. So this is a serious problem. Now, with this serious problem, as a psychologist, what we are interested in is how people make decisions. Because in order to clean up the air, people need to sacrifice in some sense, because you need to start some business, right? Yeah, you cannot have a certain industry, or you would tax certain industry more if they pollute the air. And then as individual as well, you might need to pay a higher tax, okay, in order to clean up the environment. So it's related to individuals' decision as well, especially economic decision, okay? So one thing that we are interested to know is that whether protecting the environment would be different from for high subjective SES or low subjective SES people. So because it will use private and public money, yeah, what would people do? Our argument is that how does subjective SES matter? If you feel that you're deprived, okay, then attention is paid to immediate benefit, okay, and you would be more cautious to give up your own interests. I'm already poor. Why would you tax me? Okay, and also I want my immediate benefit. I cannot wait long term because I'm deprived. Okay. We think that subjective SES matter. And of course, the immediate environment would matter as well. How does the immediate environment matter? For example, the broken window effect. This is well seen already. If you go to a place that is very, very dirty, okay, people are more likely to litter as well. Yeah, because it shows the norm of the situation. Yeah, even if I'm not littering, I cannot help. Yeah, so also it seems like people accept littering because when you look around, there are a lot of rubbish, yeah, trash around. Okay, so we think that the polluted environment reflects a norm. So when these two combine, what would be the results? Our prediction is that people who are of low SES, when they are in the polluted environment, they are least likely wanting to protect the environment. That's a very sad thing, but that's logical according to our prediction. So the way we see it is that when you are low SES, you are deprived, and when you are in a bad environment, why should I sacrifice? Already the environment is poor, I cannot help. Yeah. So I would be less likely to protect the environment. Okay, is that clear? Now, so how to do this? So at the very beginning, I mentioned about GI science, geographic information system. So indeed, we have a dream team. I'm here, yeah, although it doesn't look like me, but actually not long ago, 6 years ago, but I have short hair. But so I have the team, of colleagues who support this idea. We have my colleague from geography. He specializes in geography weather satellite. And then Li start the game. Yeah, I'll tell you more. And he's in behavioral economics. Tony Tan. Some of you might know him. He worked at Zhongnianyuan. Yeah. So he's a very good colleague, and then he's a sociologist, so he helped in sampling. Yeah, and also he advised in many other things as well, but mainly on sampling. And why we need all those is because we program it, we use a mobile phone platform. And what we did was we programmed the games in the mobile phone and then disperse it, disseminate, and recruit participants all over China. We recruit over 4,000 people, yeah, in 2 weeks. And then all over China. And because the participants use their mobile phone to respond, so we know their response, and at the same time, we know the GPS location, so we can identify the X, Y axis and the time. Okay, so Wang Bo, my satellite expert, can model the immediate, instant PM2.5 index, because environment is very important and we're really very precise of the person. And so this was the each yellow dot meaning a participants, and we put the participants in January, which is a high polluted time usually, and it was last year. And then we used mobile app, Klineberg, to do it. And the failure sample was 3,600 some. Yeah, actually we put over 4,000 participants, but we have check items. Some couldn't pass the check items. And then, and we, especially important is that it has a wide coverage, 31 provinces in China. So we use this data set. Now, as I said, we use mobile phone and we can model back the satellite data. And this is the real data, the PM2.5, real-time positioning PM2.5. And so you see that in some location it's actually over 200, okay? So the mean is about 80 some, yeah, because it's winter time. And the distribution is highly scaled. So in all our analysis, we log transform the PM2.5. So this is the log transform data, the real data we work with. Now, the investment game. So everybody start with this game, and we told them that actually we pay actual money. Yeah. So they are very serious about this game. What they did was, game one, everybody play 2 games. Game one is that there is historical data of 2 stocks, A and B. Both stocks are real A-share listed company from the Shanghai Stock Exchange market. Please choose one of the stocks if the last digit of the closing price on January 2017 of your chosen stock is odd number. You will get reward. If the last digit of the closing price is even, you will not get reward. So it's 50-50 chance, okay? And then they have 2 stocks. Stock A, you will get $30 if odd. If even, then 0. Stock B, if you pick this one. If the number is an odd number, you will get 32. Okay. So what you see is that always stock B will pay more, okay, than stock A. Stock A is always 30. Now, if you are a rational choice decision maker, what you would do is that stock A is 30, stock B is 32, right? The probability of winning is the same, is 50%, but the payoff differ. So the choice, this is the probability of picking stock A will decline, meaning you will pick B, because if you win in B, you will get 46 here. So we have, of course, a trial, we have X trial, not criticized for resulting in environmental pollution. Stock D, this company owns a factory which is criticized for resulting in environmental pollution during the production process. Okay. Now, stock D pay you more, yeah, but would you be willing to sacrifice your own interests? Okay. So, if you worry about the pollution, the blue line shows stock C, which is always 30, should be declining in a less or in a slower rate. You get it, right? Yeah. And so the difference between the two will show the pollution aversion. Okay, the larger, the more averse. Yeah. For example, you might be, if you are like high pollution aversion, if you are really concerned about the pollution, you will have a higher probability of just picking C, okay, which is a 30, okay, because stock D pollute the environment, okay, you are not picking. Is that clear? Yeah. Or if you don't care, okay, so the drop will be sharp and it will be the same in game one, okay. So that's the way that we get the behavior, and it's real interest because we are going to pay them. Okay. Yeah. So we call this paradigm scene stock paradigm, and in actual, in finance, it's in real life because they are scene stock. What is the scene stock? For example, company that sells tobacco, like smoking, gambling, or alcohol. Yeah. And many people don't invest in these companies, although some of them might be very profitable. Okay? So it's called scene stock. Yeah. So we take advantage and everybody play it. And then, again, like what I said, we measure subjective SES using the ladder. And then, so we also ask people about their education, income, asset. And as you see, they are moderately correlated, just like other people I find. The correlation is for 2 something, okay? And in our study, we partial outputs, okay, control for this. Now, the results. This is pollution stock aversion, meaning the higher, the more aversive. So we need to calculate that because it's a different score. So in this panel here, there's no control, meaning just the raw data, we didn't control anything. And the horizontal axis is the log transformed real time, 2.5. So this is the environment. And this is the scene stock aversion. And then the red is the low SES people, and this is the high SES, subjective SES people. And as what we have predicted, these people in the most polluted environment and low in their subjective SES were the least averse. That means they say, okay, if I earn more, I will buy stock D. I don't care, okay, in that sense, yeah. And here in this panel, we control for a lot of things, gender, age, education, income, and their own property as well. You see, we replicate the same thing, yeah. So the interaction actually was very robust. And again, we find this as the lowest. So in that study, after they play the game, we also asked them to play the trust game. So pretend, suppose you are A, you can pick 1 or 2. If you pick 1, you will get 40, and other unknown stranger will get 0. Okay? Or if you pick B, then you will let the other person to decide. The other person can pick 40-40, meaning each of you will get $40, or the other person will get 80 while you get 0. Okay? So you have to really have a trust in others, even strangers, that the other person will be beneficial to you. Otherwise, we will pick 1. Okay? So we look at to what extent they trust others. Okay? After they have done this, we tell them that now suppose you are B. What would you do if somebody picked you as B? Would you pick 40-40 or 0-80? So this measures trustworthiness. Are you a trusted, a person can be trusted? All right. So this is a very good game. Yeah, it's often used by economists. And again, we find that this is the probability of trusting. We find again the distribution, low SES have the lowest trust. And after we control, again, this panel is with control, you see the same interaction pattern. And then this is the trustworthiness. Again, this point emerge. Okay, and so that's what we find. And then so the first two studies combine to show you that indeed the subjective SES have the effect, especially in the second part. It also shows you that people with different subjective SES actually they have a different psychology in making important decisions. For example, the environmental protection decision. Now I'm going to end, but one of the last study I find it again is fascinating was a paper that my colleague and I in Beijing Normal University did together. It was about hippocampus gray matter volume. Yeah, you would think it should matter, right? But actually it did. Yeah. Again, we measure subjective SES. We control for the objective SES, and this is the volume of the hippocampus. And actually, in medical science, there were studies that show if you are from the poor background, poor family, especially children in poor family, actually they have smaller gray area volume in hippocampus. So that has been established. In our own study, what we want to look at is the subjective, so the psychological aspect. And we also find that the volume is lower for the low subjective SES. But the good news is that there is a moderator. What is the moderator? The moderator is self-esteem. Okay? So this low S, this is the low subjective SES people. If they have high self-esteem, actually their hippocampus volume is not that small. Actually, their volume is as high as the high SES. So subjective resilience, like self-esteem, also help. Okay? So this illustrates a good combination of biology, medicine, and also psychology. Now, summary, integrating experimental manipulation with biophysical methods. I hope I have some good illustration for you, how to combine all these different tools and different approaches. And then also I show a causal link between socio-cultural construct and environment and biology. So I think our culture in this series of study, I didn't really look at culture, but in my other study, I also look at culture. And culture will have effect as well in other domains. And then future direction. And I truly believe that now the phenomena of inequality actually underlie a lot of things. And so future direction in sense of inequality might underlie bigger socio-political movement. And I have to show you this because I just read this before I come over. Can you show that? Just look at the top. Yeah. So it's from BBC. Yeah, a recent post. Do today's global protests have anything in common? And the place where I come from, Hong Kong, yeah, we are very, everyday protests. But not only us, yeah, there are protests all around the world. And so in this article, yeah, you can scroll up. It discusses how inequality actually might be the common theme, yeah, around all these protests. And it goes around the world, yeah, and very interesting. Chile, you see, actually they canceled the international meeting, yeah, of the chief, the president in Chile because of the protests. And so in many different places, and they also analyzed, although there were, minor things or different things, but all these, even corruption is related to inequality. Okay. So I think that would be, my focus on research in the future. And let's escape. I'm going to close by going back to this graph, and I think this is very important because we
谢康怡教授精彩的演讲。我们看他从那个主观的社经地位连接到很多很多的一些行为指标、生理指标，或者摄取卡路里的这些行为、环境保护等等，都连上关系了。这样的一个精彩演讲让我想到因为我们常常听到的一个讲法，就是说，好像社会人格心理学常用问卷，然后这些不太客观，是太主观的，所以应该要到实验室里面去做一些相关的研究，比较客观。可事实上我们可以从康教授的这样一个研究里面告诉我们，就是说，单单就是主观的一些感受跟经验就跟很多很多的客观指标连上关系。那他给我们做了一个很好的就是研究证明就是说，事实上这些主客观是相互连接的，并不是客观就特别好，或者是主观就特别好，它们有很多很多的密切关联存在。那我们还有一些时间可以跟康教授交流，是不是在座的哪一位对康教授刚刚的一些内容里面有一些你的想法，想要跟康教授提出来分享跟讨论的，有没有？不用客气。请。台大的许怡同学。
Thank you for your sharing, and it's really fantastic manipulation of the experiment. And I'm wondering about the food cake experiment, and I'm curious about if this effect is a long time effect which can affect our daily food take, or it's just a short time effect. For example, when I interact with someone from higher class, I feel frustrated, I feel depressed, so maybe I will need to eat some food with higher calorie. I need a fried chicken or Coca-Cola to make myself feel better. I think in this situation, this food take behavior will be addictive for someone's psychological health. But I'm not sure if this behavior if this effect could affect could have a long-term effect, which could also affect someone's daily food intake, or it's just a short-term effect. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Excellent question. So, as a experimental social psychologist, I don't have data on that, but I think it's short time, because in our manipulation we just randomly assign people into the high versus low subjective SCS. So I think typically in a priming approach, you expect the priming effect will dissipate in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or in half an hour, it will dissipate. However, I think even with that being said, the implication of this finding is huge. Why? Because first, by doing that, we set up a causal effect. And then if you bring this back to the real life, there are people who are really in those situations day in, day out. For example, people who are in low objective SES, day in, day out, they are interacting with people who are from a higher socio-economic status, right? So this psychological effect will be long-term or lingering for them, because they keep their environment keep priming them. Okay? This is in the natural setting. Even more importantly, we say that not only the objective low SES people, but the subjective low SES people. So you might be already a professor, okay? But you feel that you, among all the professor rank, you are lower. Or you are someone who lived side by side with millionaire, Because in a society with inequality, oftentimes the inequality is visible. Okay, you see it on the street, you see it in the news, you see it everywhere. Okay, so this will be a naturalistic priming day in, day out for you. Okay, and there were indeed research that show they manipulate equality, inequality, but also they manipulate another dimension, which is visible versus invisible inequality. Okay, so they find a very strong effect that visible inequality have the strongest, most negative effect on people's cooperation. They are comparable with cooperation and competition. Okay, so I think that's the long answer. In my own experiment, I don't think it will last for long because of the priming procedures or the logic of the priming. But what I want to model is that in real life, some people are really in those situations naturalistically. Okay? Yeah.
还有没有其他的？不用客气，你也可以用中文问问题。来，请。
那个我用中文问哈，我对这个研究很有兴趣，因为我有兴趣的地方是你的 manipulation， 好像你在新加坡也有效，你在就是说在中国大陆在各地都有效。因为我在听你的演讲的时候，我想到一件事情，就是说，我从小被教育的时候，就是说你不要去羡慕别人，那别人比你好，那就是天命或者什么。那在很多这些中国儒家的想法里面，都说就是说你就是有言配命，自求多福你生来什么命你就做什么事情。所以万一你告诉我说香港的教授一个月的月薪是多少，然后台湾是多少 ，I don't care， 就是说我不会被你的 manipulation 所 prime。所以我想要知道，就是说在你的 manipulation 里面。到底有什么 magic？ 就是说，你可以就是说去 prime 那些不同 cultural 背景的人，或者是说我刚刚讲的那些儒家的观点，其实已经 out of date， 就是说不存在在任何就是说那些现在新一代的大学生里面。我不知道你对这个意见有没有什么 comment？
哇，很重要的一个问题啊，很尖锐的。So let me use English to express myself. I think it's an excellent point. As I said, I didn't really take into consideration of cultural influence, so that what you point to might be a very good direction to go, to look at how people think about their own position or their own life. Yeah. 是不是有点选认命是吗？So whether that's the case, and actually there is a concept called negotiated fate. Have you heard about that? Negotiated fate. Yeah, yeah, it's not a very well publicized idea, and actually it's already originated from my temple products, yeah, people spend money in it. So although, many, I think Taiwan people believe in, their parents taught them about their faith, but they don't just, sit back and do nothing. Actually, they are engaged in all these negotiated faith behavior. So they try to bribe the God, yeah, we call it almost like bribing, yeah, pay respect, do everything in order to alter or persuade and negotiate the mind or these supernatural forces to help you. So in a way, I think people are concerned as well, and people not just sit back and say, okay, that's my faith, and I give up. Yeah, and actually, in East Asian society, oftentimes negotiated faith is associated with more positive mental outcome. Yeah. So you are not just sitting back, but you are not saying that it's not that you are 强求, 也不强求, yeah, but you're doing something that you think you can help out, yeah, to modify your faith. Yeah. So in a way, I think it's a combination, but that's a great question. If you believe or more or less with the effect, yeah, the effect of subjective assessment. Yeah. Okay.
何应瑞从中山医学大学来，您的研究我觉得非常的有兴趣。那我就设想到一个场景，就是说，听了您的演讲之后，待会主办单位的 coffee break 的时候，那个可能甜点消耗量会少一点点。所以我在想到有3个场景一个就是说像这样子一个 conference 提供了一些食物在这边，那我们手上拿着食物来，大家说今天主办单位食物很好，开始对话的时候，也许比较自在了，这时候就吃一点。第2个场景，在那个餐厅的时候 ，all you can eat， buffet 的时候，我们要不要拿很多吃够本的，吃超过我付的钱？第2个场景，第3个场景就是说，在很高度经济开发的地方，很多很胖的人，他就吃超过他的人，是不是也这些都意味着跟他的 subject SES 有关系？其实他在虽然赚很多钱，但其实还是有很多的不满足。所以它表现在 calorie intake 上面，所以我觉得这样子的问题跟您请教，谢谢。
谢谢，很重要。这个 context， 我觉得就是 context matter a lot really. So again, that would be a very good direction to go into 我们将来的研究可能就可以朝这个方向。我刚刚跟大家报告的就是 deprive 了这个 context， 真的是一个很吸人的空间里面，你吃多少 raisin 和 chips 然后西人给你一盘面条，你吃多少，是吗？But what you said about just a casual interpersonal context versus going to a buffet, right? Versus in a bigger society, where you would eat something like that. Context will have certain contribution. However, we also think that the subjective SES will matter. For example, let's take the buffet condition. One of my collaborators and I did some study in Singapore. In Singapore, there is a concept called gasu, pashu. Yeah. So actually, if you are talk with a Singaporean, they would say that this is a national character. They would agree. However, they would feel really ashamed to say that they agree. But many people in our study, they agree that there is a stereotypic image of people, Singaporeans going to buffet. They will pile up the food, yeah, and then not to be cheap. If you are paying that amount of money, of course, yeah, you will eat, enough. And we think that actually that would be affected by the subjective SES as well. If I'm deprived, now I'm given an opportunity. Why don't I optimize my opportunities? And I Actually, that is one of the reasons why we think that ethnic minorities are more likely to be obese, especially the ethnic minorities who are migrants. For example, Filipino Americans, many of them are obese, and they are obese at a much higher rate than other ethnic groups. And why? Is because oftentimes they are from a poorer background, and they migrate from Philippines to the United States. And in the United States, actually, they can afford many fatty food at a relatively low price. Okay, so for them, they are not, physically built to consume that high-calorie foods. Usually, they are smaller in frame, unlike the white American, they are bigger in frame. So they're smaller, and so for them, actually, obesity and diabetes is a serious problem. Okay, so I think our research like going to.
基本上，那最后这个问题啊。
你听的演讲非常的 impressed。我是临床心理学系辅仁大学临床心理学林慧丽。我想知道您对于这个点3的这个 correlation， 就是 subjective and objective 这么低，您的意见是什么？谢谢。
其实这个是很多做这些研究的人的一个难题，为什么是这么低？然后呢，刚刚我说这个 health psychology 的文章里面 meta-analysis 里面，每一篇文章里面也讲了一些论据或是他们不同的 approach。然后从我没有他们这个专家，从我的角度去看，我觉得就是当然 objectively 有一定的怎么说影响，比赚多少钱啊什么什么。可是，在现在这个情况底下，在大多数的国家地区里面，其实低过重线的人真的不是很多了。现在还有就是低过贫穷线，而且没有的吃的，这真的不多。因为可能有的地方有低过贫穷线，可是政府有一些方法，用的他们可以有的吃基本的素养也有。所以对我来说，就是因为这个就是非常穷的人，其实真的很多地方也没有。所以呢，反而就是这个 psychological 的方面就增加它的explanatory power。还有就是很多时候现在尤其是机器的发达就是 visibility 是增加，这个 inequality 的 visibility， 我们很容易看电视看见哇有钱人是这样过的，然后你就很容易有这个 feeling 出来。以前如果没有这么发达的时候，可能你只是看自己村里面的人，或是自己旁边的人，可能大家也差不多。
好，非常谢谢康颖教授的演讲内容因为时间关系，我们这个场次必须要在这边结束。不过在结束之前我觉得可以用康颖教授回答刚刚几位发问者的这样的问题里面，让我们想到事实上。我们在做研究，现在好像脑神经科学比较受到重视但是事实上，他的回答里面告诉我们的文化差异、个别差异都会是重要的。所以除了general psychological mechanism 之外也许一些跟社会人格或文化心理学家的合作也是相当重要的。那最后我们再一次谢谢
感谢康莹莹教授的精彩演讲，也感谢叶光辉理事长为我们主持这场演讲。现在是中场休息时间，大会在1楼穿堂备有茶点，欢迎各位贵宾前往1楼穿堂享